All right, let's just dive right into this explainer and unpack the absolutely incredible, twisting story behind James Dean's tragic final ride. I mean, we've all heard those spooky campfire stories about his famous car, right? But today, we're laying out the actual facts, tracking exactly how a devastating crash gave birth to an unstoppable legend.
So, you have to ask, is this literally the most cursed car in history? For decades, rumors have completely swirled about a supernatural hex on this vehicle, like some malevolent force leaving a trail of death and injury stretching all across the 20th century. But today, we are separating the ghostly legends from the cold, hard mechanical facts. What you should really take away from this is how easily a tragic coincidence can be spun into a highly profitable supernatural legend.
To even begin to understand the reality here, we've got to start with the car itself, and one very specific number, 90. James Dean's car was a highly exclusive Porsche 550 Spyder. We're talking about an incredibly light mid-engine sports car with perfectly balanced weight distribution, essentially a purpose-built racing machine. In fact, Porsche only ever produced 90 of these specific Spyders, making it incredibly rare right off the assembly line.
To get his hands on one of these beauties, Dean traded in his old Porsche Speedster. And get this, he actually borrowed against his upcoming movie earnings just to meet the massive $7,000 price tag. Once he finally got it, he had renowned Hollywood customizer Dean Jeffries personalize it. Jeffries later recalled using a gloss black enamel paint to permanently brush the famous nickname, Little Bastard, right onto the aluminum skin. It was actually a moniker studio boss Jack Warner had angrily given him, and Dean just wore it like a badge of honor.
Section 1. Anatomy of the crash. Now, what's genuinely incredible about this crash is how its actual mechanics were just completely misunderstood by the public for nearly half a century. And the whole thing went down with tragic, almost unbelievable speed. On September 21, 1955, Dean buys the Spyder. Just 2 days later, fellow actor Alec Guinness sees the car and gives Dean this super eerie warning, literally telling him he would die in it. Exactly a week after that warning, on September 30th at 5:45 p.m., Dean was driving out to a road race in Salinas. Right at that tricky twilight hour, his low-riding Porsche collided with a heavy, left-turning 1950 Ford Tudor at Cholome Junction.
And this right here brilliantly illustrates a massive reality gap. For decades, early authorities basically assumed, well, Dean was a young hotshot, so he must have been recklessly speeding at 100 miles per hour, right? But fast forward to the 1990s, and an engineering firm called Exponent did a scientific reconstruction using photogrammetry. They definitively proved Dean was actually driving at a very safe 65 miles per hour. The actual reality? The other driver was completely at fault, simply turning left into oncoming traffic because he literally couldn't see Dean's low, shiny silver car in the blinding glare of the setting sun.
Section 2. Fabricating a curse.
So how exactly does an explainable, albeit completely tragic accident suddenly morph into a highly profitable supernatural hoax? Well, the seed of the whole curse was planted when customizer George Barris purchased the mangled wreckage of Little Bastard from a salvage yard. He then turned around and sold the undamaged salvage parts to two doctors who were also big racing enthusiasts. The engine went to Dr. William Esrich, and some other parts went to Troy McHenry. Then, in October 1956, the two men raced their cars. Tragically, McHenry hit a tree and died. Now, while this was completely coincidental in the incredibly dangerous racing world of the 1950s, fans immediately began whispering about a jinx.
Let's take a look at how this legend built up over time, because opportunists literally invented sensational stories out of thin air just to monetize the tragedy. A story about the car rolling off a stand and crushing a teenager's hip in 1959? Actually, complete fabrication by Barris. There is zero newspaper record of it. Or what about the car breaking in half on a transport truck? Well, documentary evidence proves the wreckage remained completely intact until 1960. Oh, and my personal favorite, that wild 1990 claim that the Porsche was built from the cursed steel of Archduke Franz Ferdinand's assassination car. Pure fiction. It was completely fabricated by a writer using a pseudonym for the Robb Report. Honestly, the sheer audacity of the grift is pretty astounding.
Section 3. The missing wreckage.
But, the myth-making truly exploded after the physical car pulled off a very real, very mysterious trick of its own. Back in 1960, the physical wreckage of Little Bastard completely vanished without a trace from a locked shipping container while in transit from Miami to Los Angeles. It had been out on tour as a highway safety exhibit trying to warn folks against the dangers of speeding. When it disappeared, George Barris offered totally contradictory stories. Sometimes he'd say it vanished from a truck, other times he claimed it was a train. But the undeniable fact is the crumpled chassis completely, inexplicably disappeared.
And think about it. What happens when the physical evidence is just gone? The legend grows completely unchecked. By 1969, you had sensational reports claiming actor Sal Mino conjured Dean's ghost via a Ouija board. Then in 1974, George Barris published his highly embellished book Cars of the Stars, cementing his fake curse stories right into pop culture history. And by 1975, DC Comics even published Ghosts 44, officially identifying the car as a supernatural killer. This whole timeline perfectly illustrates a deep human need to find some kind of supernatural meaning in the senseless random loss of a young icon. We want there to be a reason, right? Even if that reason is a ghost story.
Section 4, Pieces of the Puzzle.
However, history has a pretty remarkable way of leaving tangible clues behind. For decades, investigators hit nothing but dead ends. But then, in 2005, the Volo Auto Museum offered a massive $1 million bounty for the car. A decade later, a Washington man actually passed a polygraph test, claiming he witnessed the car being hidden behind a false wall as a young boy in the 1960s. This completely sparked renewed interest. Eventually, the combination of these tips and some relentless searching led an East Coast Porsche collector named Don Ahern to bring a crucial piece of the car back into the light after it had been sitting hidden in a Massachusetts crate for 30 years. This massive breakthrough finally grounded this ghost story firmly back in reality.
Which brings us to this specific number, 1046. Now, this isn't just some random string of digits. This is the actual factory serial stamp found directly on the original complete transaxle assembly of James Dean's 550 Spyder, rediscovered and brought back into the public eye in 2020.
Authenticated by experts all the way back to 1984, this transaxle assembly is literally the only documented provable part of the car known to exist today. Now removed from its wooden crate and mounted in a beautiful custom display exactly as it sat in the car, this incredible mechanical artifact proves definitively that we are dealing with a tangible piece of automotive history. Not a haunted object, it's just aluminum, steel, and gears.
So what you should really take away from this explainer is that while the supernatural curse is pure profitable fiction, the mystery of the missing wreckage, that is absolutely real, which leaves us with one seriously haunting question. Where exactly is the rest of chassis 550-0055 hiding today? The transaxle survived, the original engine might actually still be sitting somewhere in a garage in California, but the body itself vanished. It leaves us all to wonder, what else is just waiting to be discovered behind a false wall out there? Keep that in mind the next time you hear a ghost story. There's almost always an incredible, real history hiding just underneath the surface. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep your curiosity fired up, and I'll see you next time.